Hear ye, hear ye. If you think Reddington's cross-examination of Dr. Mack on Friday was way too aggressive, you're not imagining things. It absolutely was, by design. My full day 18 recap is coming shortly, but I wanted to post this video first because I really wanted to get into the strategy of what I'm seeing, what I think a lot of people are seeing. Why is it important? Why is he allowed to talk to a witness this way? Let's talk about it. Okay, for starters, cross-examination, especially in a criminal trial, is not meant to be a polite interview. Reddington's job is not to make Dr. Mack comfortable enough to fully explain his opinions to the jury. The prosecution already gave him that opportunity on direct. Cross is where opposing counsel gets to test those opinions. That means testing the witness's qualifications, methodology, sources of information, assumptions, possible bias, and ultimately, credibility. One thing you probably noticed was Reddington repeatedly using the word investigate. Mack clearly did not like that word. He preferred evaluate, and Reddington kept coming back to it. He was snarky about it right out of the gate. Do I need to explain to you what investigate means? Why? Because words frame how the jury understands what this expert actually did. If Mack is going to give conclusions about who Lindsay Clancy was, what her psychiatric history meant, and what her mental state was, Reddington wants the jury asking, okay, but how thoroughly did you actually assess the person whose mind you're telling us about, especially when you were retained and paid by the prosecution? In other words, did you simply evaluate her, or were you investigating her? And then Reddington got one of the answers he wanted. Mack spoke to no collateral contacts. For those who may not know, a collateral contact is someone other than the person being evaluated who can independently provide relevant information. We're talking family members, coworkers, friends, medical professionals, people who actually observed that person over time. Mack interviewed Lindsay and reviewed extensive records, but he did not independently interview the people who knew her throughout her life. And that's a reoccurring theme in this trial, if you haven't noticed. Experts having to interpret what is in those records or speaking only to Lindsay without necessarily speaking to the people behind her. So when Mack started describing Lindsay's personality, her work habits, even this supposed lifelong aversion to medication, Reddington's questioning became abrasive. Okay, but how do you know that? That is classic cross-examination. Then he narrowed Mack's expertise, and this is where we spent approximately 17 business years going through Mack's resume. Children, adolescents, substance abuse, addiction, pediatric psychiatry, juvenile offenders, more adolescents, more substance abuse. At one point, I was like, okay, we get it. The man has met a few teenagers. But that was the point. The Commonwealth called Dr. Mack to rebut a very specific defense theory involving bipolar disorder, postpartum mental illness, and psychosis. So Reddington wants the jury asking, how much of your actual career has been devoted to this particular population? Mack eventually estimated that he had treated roughly 10 cases involving postpartum psychosis over a span of 25 years. That does not make him unqualified, by the way. He's still a highly credentialed forensic psychiatrist. But being qualified to testify and being the most persuasive expert on a very specific subject are two completely different things. And as Judge Sullivan has repeatedly reminded this jury, they decide how much weight to give an expert's opinion. That is what Reddington is attacking. Keyword, attack. He also established that Mack is affiliated with Park Dietz and Associates, as is another Commonwealth rebuttal expert, Dr. Kirk Heilbrunn. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I think it's Heilbrunn. We learned that Mack and Heilbrunn interviewed Lindsay together, have discussed their opinions, and Mack reviewed Heilbrunn's report. Does that automatically mean either opinion is biased? No. But does the defense get to question the independence of two experts retained by the same side, affiliated with the same organization, who evaluated Lindsay together? You bet your ass they do. Especially after Mack testified that a forensic evaluation should be independent. And if the name Park Dietz sounds familiar, Dr. Park Dietz himself was a prosecution expert in Andrea Yates' first murder trial. There is a whole story there involving testimony about a non-existent Law & Order episode that later became significant when Yates' conviction was overturned. Reddington touched on that briefly before the objections started flying. I'm putting a pin in that because I have a feeling Reddington is not finished with this line of questioning, and I want to see where he takes it on day 19. Okay, let's get to the crux of it. Can a lawyer go too far on cross? Absolutely. We have watched attorneys on both sides of this case toe that line. And there were moments where Reddington absolutely sounded aggressive. At one point, while challenging Mack's claim that Lindsay had a lifelong resistance to medication, he flat out asked, "Are you making this up?" That is very sharp. very confrontational, and I understand why some people heard that and was like, oh, hostile. But I am still having a hard time clutching my pearls over Reddington's tone when we have also watched the Commonwealth ask a witness whether murder is a mortal sin, and on the very same day, Prosecutor Sprigg responded to Dr. Resnick's testimony about Lindsay's fear of losing her children with, so it's better to kill them than to have them taken away. Now, the judge struck that, okay? And when something is stricken, the jury is instructed not to consider it. However, the jury is made up of 12 human beings, and this isn't Men in Black. Judge Sullivan doesn't have a neuralizer sitting on his desk. He can't flashy thing people, you know? So you cannot literally have somebody unhear something they heard. You can only presume that they're not going to consider it because that's what the instruction says. And both sides know that, which is why I'm saying if we're going to have a conversation about aggressive rhetoric, I just think it should be consistent on both sides. Now, keep watching the pattern. It's well established. Reddington has been doing this the entire trial. Obviously, Reddington isn't finished. He's going to continue his cross-examination of Dr. Mack, and then we're going to get the next rebuttal witness. I'm very interested to see where this Park Dietz and Associates line of questioning is going. I have a feeling I know, but, I'm interested to see it play out. I'll be back with my thoughts on that in the Day 19 recap, and yes, that one will be on time. It'll be later in the evening, but it'll be on time, okay? I'm watching a lot of trials. But for now, tell me in the comments, what do you think? Do you think it was par for the course, or do you think he went too far? Or, better yet, was it effective? Because at the end of the day, it's up to the judge to decide when something has crossed a line. That's his job. And whatever the jury is allowed to hear, it's about effectiveness, right? Because this is how they form their opinion about how much weight to give each expert witness, or any witness in general. So I'll be reading your comments. I'll place a little poll in the comments too, and I'll catch you in the next one.